What weird flex you proud of? Story 1. I made a meme on a small subreddit and a couple hours later, my buddy sent me my own meme not knowing I made it. I am a hobbyist photographer. Someone used my photo for the background and put an inspirational quote over it. My friend from Berlin, I'm in the US, sent me the inspirational quote, photo, and I recognized my picture. My wife didn't believe me for several weeks. I showed her both side by side. Every leaf and twig was in the exact same position. She finally agreed. I'm still not sure she believes me. It's just such a great coincidence. Story 2. I bought the 2 first books of A Song of Ice and Fire from a dude in 1999 I met on Usenet. Couldn't find them in a bookstore. He said he had cases of them in his basement and if I wanted them autographed. It was GRRM himself and way before they got popular. Story 3. I have an uncanny knack for remembering people. Even people that I see very briefly. For example, I once saw a guy on the escalator in Toronto and I said, "Hey, when did you move here from Vienna?" He was flabbergasted. I had walked past him on the street once while visiting there and 5 years later I recognized him. Story 4. Right now I hold the record at my local barcade for Street Fighter 2. 1,010,000. I also get free beer because of it. It all happened because I was going back and forth with this guy that I haven't met yet on who can get the high score on their board. He held the record at 762,000 and then I beat it with 788,000. He's been trying to beat it ever since I posted that score, and the closest he got was 770,000. When I seen that score posted on the game itself, I had about 6 beers in me and I walked over there and dropped the million by getting perfect on most of the bosses and a handful of perfects on the regular players. He's never going to touch that shit now. Story 5. I got a pity pat from Obama. This was ages ago when he was still just a senator from Illinois. I got a job at a local radio station as a reporter for news in the area. Obama was speaking at a community college in the area, and I was told to listen to his address and ask relevant questions afterwards. I had never done that before or since and I barely listened. And at the end he met with the press, which was me and a local newspaper guy. After he finished with the other guy he looks at me and says, "What can I do for you?" My mind went totally blank and I just stood there staring at him. This went on for a little too long, and eventually he reaches out a hand, pats me gently on the shoulder and goes, "It's okay," and then walked off. Lol. Story 6. I have finished 3 full tubes of chapstick in my life. Not lost or missing. Finished to the end, but you reminded me of a quirk of my friend. She's obsessed with a very specific flavor of a chapstick brand, popular back in high school. She needed this stuff all day. Had it on her in her car, in her purse and one bedside at all times. The company ended the flavor. She called the head office and convinced them how important this stuff was. They agreed to sell her a literal pallet of the stuff. Boxes and boxes. I really need to message her and ask how her stash is doing. God, what happens when that runs out? I don't think that company exists anymore. Story 7. I can write with either hand. Not such an impressive skill, but when my colleague remarked that my handwriting is beautiful, despite using my dominant right hand to also type at the same time, it made me blush. It was indeed a very beautiful and calligraphic handwriting. Story 8. It's weird, I can wear children's shoes because my feet are so small. While that seems odd, I'm proud because as an adult, I can buy those Ninja Turtles shoes my mom so disappointingly never let me get because I'm a lady. Story 9. When I was a little kid, multiple doctors said I would never be able to speak and that I would need assisted living for the rest of my life. Now I'm 16 and capable of taking care of myself, and I'm able to speak perfectly fine other than a slight stutter when I get really anxious. Story 10. I won a race on my local dirt track with my normal everyday car. Most people initially thought my car didn't have a chance to win, since it was just a 4-cylinder, but after it won, lots of people cried about it having such a huge advantage because it's all-wheel drive. I followed the rules. Not my fault they let me bring a gun for cylinder turbo AWD to a knife V8 RWD. Fight just because most people locally like knives. Story 11. I've been at my job for 1.5 years. I started at the shit end overnight shift 3 nights a week 6 months ago. I was promoted to shift supervisor last week. I was promoted to store leader. I have worked minimum wage and dead-end jobs my whole life. I am super proud of myself. Story 12. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and I saved a man's life when he collapsed outside my apartment. It was during the height of COVID. I could hear people shouting, and I looked out the window to the scene of a man face down on the road, and people standing around him in a panic. I shoved my PP equipment on. I keep some at home for cleaning, and ran downstairs in my pajamas, no socks or shoes on. He wasn't breathing and had a massive cut on his head, so deep you could see his skull. Nobody knew how long he was in cardiac arrest for. I managed to get his heart going again by myself. I had so much adrenaline going, and when the paramedics came I gave them the full handover as they took him away. The paramedics took my details, in case the hospital wanted to contact me. A week later, I got a phone call from the man and his wife to say thank you for saving his life, and if I ever needed anything they would help me. After he went away in the ambulance and the adrenaline wore off, I cried my eyes out, praying he would be okay. I still think about him regularly and feel very proud of myself. Story 13. In the 1980s, there used to be a small ad every week in the back pages of the UK actors magazine The Stage, for a guy called David Burglass. It was just his silhouette, his name, his agent's phone number, and the caption, International Man of Mystery. The simple genius of it was so giddying that I felt compelled to steal it. When I wrote the program notes for one of the performers in a student comedy show I directed, another performer in that show was a guy called Neil Malarkey who went on to form a double act with a young Canadian comedian called Mike Myers. He and Mike both loved that phrase, but neither of them knew where I'd got it from, so Mike just stole it again decades later. I got in touch with David Burglass, then aged 90, via his son and apologized for nicking it. He got back to say he was delighted to find out how Mike Myers had come by that phrase and told me I'm forgiven. He's still alive today and nearly 100 years old. Burglass was a truly great magician, a huge star of British TV in the 50s and 60s, and deserves acknowledgement for that brilliant strapline. I'm also sheepishly proud of my part in the chain of theft that led to Austin Powers. Story 14. There were 2 positions coming up for promotion at my work, and 3 of us applied. My 2 colleagues got hired, which left me as the losing candidate. So I used this as a fire under my ass and applied for another job. Only issue is, the job had a brutal test interview which was for hours of memory recall, alphanumeric, and other testing including math by hand, etc. It was on a Saturday at noon, but I worked until 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, a night shift, punched in 11:45 p.m. the night before. So I worked my night shift, went home, slept for 45 minutes, showered, shaved, put on a suit, down a triple espresso from Starbucks, went to the interview sleep deprived, but I wanted out of my old job so bad I decided failure wasn't an option. I tested 79 WPM typing speed. I can do better. But I was up all night and 100% memory recall. I got the job and gave my notice at my old job soon thereafter. Story 15. I know a lot about old Volkswagens and many other old cars, so much so that people have labeled it as creepy or almost scary. When I am out driving, I often remember specific cars I have met randomly or seen parked along the way. Some of them were almost 30 years ago, but the memories stick. At the same time, I cannot remember what I did yesterday. Story 16. I was a champion at the game Hot Hands. The way we played it was about 10 people in a circle, stacked their hands on each other's. The person with their hand at the bottom takes it out and slams it down with the flat of their palm as hard as they can onto the top of stack. You lose if you pull your hand out or give up. I was great at it because I am a volleyball player, but also because I'm dead inside. Story 17. My friend and I got stopped by the police as 16-years. because they'd set up a speed trap on a hill and they'd caught us going 40 miles per hour down the hill, on bikes in a 30 zone. They didn't give us any repercussions, just had a long chat with us about safety. I can't say we didn't need it. We still joke about that Vauxhall Corsa, flashing its lights behind us asking us to pull over, haha. Last year in 6th form my friend and I rickrolled the whole school end of year assembly, with a memory stick plugged into the stage sound desk, when I was helping set up the mix for the drama students. A few months prior I'd noticed it was the same sound desk as the one my dad uses, meaning I knew it had a built-in delay function and the ability to load audio files. From a USB stick we snuck up half an hour before the assembly and planted the stick in the back set to trigger in 30 minutes. It was the best prank we ever pulled, didn't even get found out. Planning on claiming responsibility once we finish with exams this year. Story 18. When I was 5 we were at the fair, and this famous in our town anyway caricature artist told my mom he could not draw me. He stared at me sitting there for like 15 minutes before he told her he couldn't draw me. He said in 30 years of drawing people he's only met 4. He couldn't draw, I was the 4th. He said some very rare people have such a unique and different presence, vibe that he just can't peg them down to draw them. My mom asked if it was my age and he said nope. He does kids' parties all the time.